Greetings, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to listen to our upload of the week. As a point of departure, I would like to apologize that for the past weeks I was unable to upload anything because I was preoccupied with exams like my learners wrote, and I had to mark and deal with all the administration that comes with exam, as well as that I had to attend some workshops, and this week and next week I will be writing my own exam, so I had to prepare as well. So due to those activities and events, I had to just focus, and I was unable to upload anything. But nevertheless, today we'll take a few minutes just to look into the Soweto uprising, that is otherwise the event and that led to the African Child Day that we commemorate in most of the African countries. But my understanding has been always that we cannot always just engage into historical events for the purpose of looking at what happened then, but we also need to reflect and see what is it that we can learn, either something that we can adopt into our present, real life situation, or maybe into projecting the future, but also perhaps what is it that we can learn in terms of mistakes that were made by those who came before us. Now, in the case of the Soweto uprising in South Africa, is that the most important thing is that the apartheid events in South Africa led to what we can call a societal consciousness. That means that a lot of people in South Africa understood what was happening, what was wrong with apartheid, and what is it that the victims of apartheid can do in order for them to liberate themselves. But that is something that we don't see nowadays. Like, you see a lot of people know that there is poverty, there is unemployment, there is bad governance, there is corruption. But what is it that we can do in order for us to deal with that? A lot of people don't want to be involved simply because it appears that there is no societal consciousness. Now, to take the conversation forward is that you would note that apartheid in South Africa was introduced in 1948 as a government policy, although it has been there, but by 1948 it was officially introduced as a government policy. Now, in 1951, as a response to that, the African National Congress, otherwise the ANC, then launched what they call the Defiance Campaign, where they encouraged the public, especially black people, to disobey apartheid laws. And then in 1955 again, the ANC and the like-minded organization, they went to what is known as the Congress of the People, where now they adopted what we today know as the Freedom Charter, that now deals with what is it that need to happen in order for everybody else to get freedom and equality that apartheid deprived them from. And then from there, you would also again know that in the late 60s was that black people protested against the pass law, where they banned their passes, and that led to Sharpeville massacre. And then ultimately in the 60s, the ANC and the PAC, they were banned by the apartheid government because they were now perceived to be notorious organizations. So from there was then vacuum of leadership in South Africa, because now these leaders of the ANC and the PAC, they were banned. Some of them, they were arrested, and some of them went into exile so that they are able to prepare for the struggle. So now, at that point in time, there was leadership vacuum in South Africa, and a new wave of leadership emerged. And interesting enough, it was coming from generally young people who were university students. So now the biggest face that we might recall from there is Steve Bantu Biko. He was one of those leaders who emerged because there was a vacuum now that the leaders of the ANC and the PAC, they were not there. So Steve Bantu Biko and all other young people who were leading what was known as the Black Consciousness Movement came on board to take the struggle forward. Now, what this Black consciousness movement was doing was to advocate for, Black people to just know their wealth as Black people, to respect their culture, and to reject the notion of white rebels and the ideas that they bring on board. And they even had to reject what they then call as linguistic imperialism. So they wanted more of African-centered type of literature and learning and approach to things. So now that generation of Steve Bantu Biko, the 1976 generation, is now the one that instilled this consciousness in a lot of these people in South Africa, especially young people, to the extent that these young people, they were able to confront even their own parents about why they were very quiet about what is happening in South Africa. So we had those irresponsible parents who just go to Shebeens, drink alcohol and all of that. This generation was able to go and confront them there at the Shebeen to say, why are you here drinking alcohol while out there our country is being colonized by these apartheid people? So now that type of bravery and ability to even confront your own parents about them doing nothing about colonialism is commendable, and is something that we perhaps need to learn as young people of the day. Of course, you might not want to go and disrupt those who are drinking alcohol while corruption, bad governance, unemployment, poverty is ongoing. But there's this point where you see young people who are saying, I cannot convince my parents to, for instance, not to vote for the former liberation movement. Or I cannot, I'm hiding where I should affiliate in terms of politics because my parents won't like it. But what is so difficult with you trying to just convince your parents that, look, the issue of unemployment, poverty, low standard of living, underdevelopment, inequalities that are happening in this country, and there is a need for us to change those situations, and all of us must engage into that process and those programs. So we are unable to do that. But also nowadays, young people are so disengaged. So when you go to them talking about these things that are affecting society, majority of them are not willing to listen. Okay, and this thing has to do with consciousness. Like, they just don't understand that there is no one who will come and change things for them. But as young people, we, all of us, need to stand up if we want better. Otherwise, if we can't, then there's nothing that will happen. And again, this 1976 generation in South Africa, they appreciated the fact that the former liberation movements, or the liberation movements at that time, they were unable to do anything. Therefore, as a result, they must take the struggle forward. But now here in Namibia, we understand that the former liberation movement is hijacked by those who want to pursue their personal interest. But as young people, we don't seek alternatives in order to take the struggle forward. Okay, so those are the things that we perhaps need to look at. If you look into high school students today, the content that they are being taught, some of them, the condition under which they are being taught is just not good, but you won't see them saying or doing anything. So classrooms are overcrowded, there are no materials at school, some of them toilets, and they're just not up to standard, but you don't see anything happening there. If you even go to universities, worse is that a lot of student unions and student representative councils are actually just being led by celebrities who have no understanding and appreciation of the struggle that students are going through. And then as a result, there's just nothing that is happening in campuses. So a lot of students are being asked to, sleep with lecturers for marks. A lot of things are happening out there, but nobody really, cares that much, because there is no consciousness amongst, student leaders and those who are leading these organizations. And then there's something go even further to, if you go to workers' unions, for instance, even unions of professionals, still there's no consciousness. So now the lessons that we can perhaps learn is that the struggle can better be waged if majority of people are conscious about what is happening and what need to happen in order for us to confront and undo what is just happening. Otherwise, if people are not conscious, then at the end of the day, they are unable to engage. In fact, some of them will end up fighting those who are fighting for them because they do not understand what is happening. So that is the conversation we perhaps need to look into and to have to say, how do we then ensure that society at large is conscious about what is happening and what is it that they can do? Because generally, battles and struggles can never be won when you only have a few people who are waging that struggle. But the struggle can be successfully be won if you do have majority of the people who are conscious and they understand that they are their own liberators. If they don't stand up and fight for themselves, then nobody will stand up for them. So we need a situation where learners understand that if they need better education, nobody is going to stand up for them, but they need to stand up for themselves. A situation where students also understand that no one is going to rescue them until they stand up themselves. A situation where unemployed people understand that no one is going to ensure that there is job creation and there are job opportunities for them until they stand up themselves and demand for better. I mean, we have seen people who are in government saying young people must create their own jobs and things like that. But people who are talking, they are employed by the government because they are unable to create their own jobs. But they want others to go and create their own jobs. So now these unemployed people, they need to understand that if they don't stand up themselves, then nobody will do that for them. So they need to stand up and demand for job opportunities. You also need a situation where the church is also able to play its part and role in terms of the struggle that people are going through. So if we reach that level where all sectors of society understand their role and they are playing their role in a much more meaningful way, then at least we are able to do better. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then at the end of the day, we cannot liberate ourselves and we cannot see the Namibia that we perhaps want to live in. So my lesson that I learned from this 1976 generation was that when former liberation movements are either hijacked or unable to perform their duty, it's the duty of young people to take up the struggle so that they are able to find their own vehicle to achieve the objectives of the struggle. That's one. Number two is that everybody ought to be conscious about what is happening and what needs to happen so that they are able to take part into the struggle, and that all stratas of society, unions, churches, traditional leaders, intellectuals, everybody else need to come on board and play their role. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then at the end of the day, definitely it will continue to be as business as usual, and then our country will not move anywhere. Those are just my thoughts around the African Child Day, and would really want to encourage everybody else to play their role as far as the struggle is concerned, because it is only through this collective effort that we are able to take this struggle forward and succeed. Otherwise, if it is only a few people who are fighting, then it becomes so difficult for the struggle to move forward and achieve its goals. That is just my view. What are your views? Let me hear about your views in the comment section.